Hey, if you like what you see, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that noti bell because it really helps out. As someone who's been into Battlefield since this game came out, I can confidently say that Battlefield Bad Company 2 remains one of the series' most replayable and in many ways most enjoyable entries. Where later Battlefield titles leaned heavily into large-scale multiplayer battles and spectacle, Bad Company 2 struck a perfect balance between sharp, explosive gunplay and a surprisingly engaging single-player story. It was a rare mix of cinematic intensity and grounded humor that gave the campaign personality while still showcasing the core elements that makes Battlefield unique. Destructible environments, team-driven combat, and the satisfying chaos of wide-open firefights. For me, it wasn't just another FPS campaign to run through once and forget, it was one I kept returning to, drawn back by its blend of grit, camaraderie, and pure unadulterated fun. What makes Bad Company 2 so endlessly replayable is that it dared to do something few Battlefield titles before or since have attempted. It gave us a squad of characters we actually gave a fuck about. The Bad Company squad, Sarge, Sweetwater, Haggard, and Marlowe, were more than just NPCs following you around, they were personalities, constantly bantering and reacting to the insanity of the battlefield in ways that made every mission feel alive. Their dynamic provided levity in a genre that often takes itself far too seriously, and that levity is what made me want to revisit this campaign over and over again. No matter how many times I replayed, I always found myself smiling at Sweetwater's sarcasm, Haggard's love for explosions, or Sarge's grizzled determination. It gave the game heart, and that heart hasn't been matched in this series since. Then of course, there's the gameplay itself. Battlefield Bad Company 2 delivered what I'd argue is the sharpest, most satisfying blend of Battlefield mechanics, tight gunplay, vehicles that felt impactful without being overpowered, and the series' signature destructibility dialed up to a whole new level. Blowing holes through walls or leveling entire buildings wasn't just a mere gimmick, it was strategy, and every mission felt different depending on how you approached it. This freedom of play style is what makes the gameplay endlessly entertaining even after countless replays. Combine that with pacing that never dragged and set pieces that rival anything Call of Duty was doing at the time, and you get a Battlefield experience that feels complete, not just on the multiplayer side, but as a total package. For me, that's why Bad Company 2 stands tall. It didn't just offer great FPS battles, it offered a game world and a group of characters worth coming back to. What immediately set Battlefield Bad Company 2 apart from so many other shooters of its time, and even nowadays, is the fact that its single-player story wasn't an afterthought. In a generation dominated by military shooters that leaned on cliches of faceless soldiers and generic stop the terrorists plot, Bad Company 2 actually dared to inject personality, humor, and character into its campaign. The story followed the ragtag Bad Company squad, Marlowe, Sweetwater, Haggard, and Sarge, as they stumbled into a global conflict revolving around a mysterious superweapon. On paper, the narrative sounds like your standard action thriller, but the execution is where the magic happened. Instead of painting the squad as unstoppable war heroes, the game leaned into their underdog status. They were misfits, expendables, the guys the army didn't exactly put on posters. That twist gave this whole journey a freshness that other military shooters lack. What kept me hooked through multiple playthroughs wasn't the broad strokes of the plot itself, it was how the game delivered it. Missions were packed with the right mix of high-stakes urgency and grounded character-driven moments, whether you were infiltrating snowy mountains, tearing through South American jungles, or wading through war-torn villages. There was always this perfect balance between bombastic set pieces and the human element that kept it all relatable. The story never felt like it was dragging me along for the sake of spectacle. Instead, it felt like I was part of an unpredictable road trip with a squad constantly reminding me why I cared in the first place. Even when the world-ending stakes came into play, the heart of the narrative was always the camaraderie of Bad Company itself. Another reason this story holds up so well, and why I think it's so endlessly replayable, especially nowadays in 2025, is because of the tone. Unlike the ultra-serious, near-paranoid tone of other shooters, Bad Company 2 let itself breathe. The humor wasn't forced or out of place, it came naturally from the personalities of the squad and their reactions to the absurd situations they often found themselves in. Sweetwater's sarcastic quips, Haggard's over-the-top love for explosions, and Sarge's wary pragmatism gave this campaign a rhythm that was easy to sink into again and again. It wasn't trying to be Oscar-worthy drama, but it didn't need to be. Instead, it found a sweet spot that made the story fun without undermining the stakes. That mix of sharp writing and grounded stakes is why the narrative is still so remembered fondly by fans, and why I will always see Battlefield Bad Company 2 as Battlefield at its best. If the plot of Battlefield Bad Company 2 gave the game its structure, the squad itself gave it its soul. What makes the campaign so enduring, even after countless replays, is that it wasn't just about you as the player, it was about them. The 4 members of Bad Company weren't faceless AI companions who faded into the background, they were fleshed out personalities, each one distinct and memorable. The squad dynamic was a constant reminder that it wasn't just a lone wolf journey, it was a team effort, and that team was as entertaining as it was effective. In a way, they were Battlefield's secret weapon, the element that gave Bad Company 2 a lasting identity no other entry in the franchise has matched since. Marlowe, the quiet protagonist, served as the anchor. He was the straight man to the chaos around him, letting the rest of the squad's personality shine. Sweetwater was the brains of the group, or at least he thought he was, because his sarcastic wit and constant commentary added a lightness to even the most intense firefights. Haggard was the muscle, the demolition enthusiast who could turn the simplest mission into a fireworks display, and his unfiltered enthusiasm for blowing things up gave the campaign its most laugh-out-loud moments. Then there was Sarge, the weary veteran who just wanted out, holding the squad together with his begrudging sense of responsibility. Each of them filled a role, not just mechanically, but emotionally, creating a dynamic that felt more like a dysfunctional family than a standard military unit. It's this interplay between the characters that made replaying the story such a joy. You didn't just revisit missions for the gunfights, you came back to hear the squad's banter, to watch how their personalities clashed and meshed under pressure. Their exchanges gave the game a humanity that so many other shooters lacked. The camaraderie was believable, and that believability made the stakes feel higher when things got serious. That's why, for me, the squad is the beating heart of Bad Company 2, a group of characters you couldn't help but root for, no matter how many times you've gone through the same exact journey. What makes revisiting Battlefield Bad Company 2 bittersweet is the knowledge that it's been 15 years and we've yet to see a Bad Company 3. For a series that found its footing on spectacle and large-scale multiplayer battles, it's frustrating that the one branch of the franchise that gave us genuine character-driven storytelling has been left to gather dust. Each passing year of new Battlefield releases only reminds me how much the Bad Company squad is missed. The humor, the camaraderie, the sharp pacing of the campaign, those things haven't been replicated, and no amount of technical polish or bigger maps can replace the heart that Bad Company brought to the franchise. In today's FPS landscape, where so many games struggle to balance personality with polish, I believe a return to Bad Company is not only overdue, but necessary. Modern shooters often feel interchangeable, chasing trends like live service models, battle passes, and competitive metas, or forgetting the simple joy of a campaign that makes you care about the characters by your side. A new Bad Company, or at the very least a remaster of Bad Company or Bad Company 2, could remind the industry what it means to create a game that is both fun to play and memorable to experience. Imagine today's technology applied to Frostbite's destructibility with updated visuals and gameplay refinements, all while keeping the original squad intact. It's not just nostalgia, it's a genuine opportunity to reintroduce something unique into a genre that desperately needs it. The absence of a continuation feels like a missed opportunity, not only for fans like me, but for Battlefield as a whole. Every time a new Battlefield is announced, the hope resurfaces, only to be dashed when there's no mention of Bad Company. 15 years is a long wait, but the fact that players still talk about and revisit Bad Company 2 speaks volumes about its legacy. It proved that Battlefield could do more than massive multiplayer chaos. It could tell a story, create unforgettable characters, and still deliver thrilling gameplay. That's why I will always keep holding out hope for Bad Company 3, or at least the respect of a proper remaster, because if there was ever a time when the genre needed a reminder of how fun and replayable a great campaign can be, it's now. One of the defining elements of Battlefield Bad Company 2 And the key reason it remains so replayable to this day is the sheer joy of destruction. Frostbite engine at the time was nothing short of revolutionary, and no other shooter let you reshape the battlefield in quite the same way as Battlefield Bad Company 2 did. Blowing holes through walls to flush out enemies, collapsing buildings to change the flow of combat, or even just creating your own shortcuts through the environment gave every mission a sense of unpredictability. No two playthroughs ever felt exactly the same because the tools of destruction were always in your own hands. That freedom of choice turned each mission into a playground of infinite possibilities where creativity was rewarded just as much as precision. What also made the campaign stand out were the missions themselves, which were far more varied and memorable than your typical linear military shooter. From the snowy peaks of Russia to dense jungles in South America, each mission felt distinct in both tone and design. One moment you were on the defensive, holding your ground as waves of enemies stormed your position, and the next you were speeding across wide open battlefields in vehicles, turning the fight into chaotic spectacle. The pacing was near perfect, mixing smaller character-driven moments with large-scale set-pieces that always kept you on your toes. That variety gave the campaign the legs, meaning it never felt stale, and that's why replaying it even now feels as exciting now as it did during its initial release. It's also worth noting how much the destructibility enhanced the narrative itself. Missions didn't just rely on scripted events to create tension, instead they left you craft your own cinematic moments. Maybe it was taking out a sniper nest by collapsing a tower, or clearing a fortified house by blowing out the walls rather than kicking down the door. Those choices were yours, and they made you feel like a genuine part of Bad Company's chaos rather than just a mere passenger with a gun. The missions were memorable not because they forced spectacle, but because they gave you the freedom to create it. That's the magic of Bad Company 2. It turned every firefight into a story worth retelling, which is why destruction, in all of its glory, remains one of its most defining joys. Looking back, it's easy to see why Bad Company 2 remains, in my eyes, the most replayable and enjoyable entry in the franchise to date. The story gave us a refreshing mix of tension and humor, delivering a campaign that felt both cinematic and grounded. The Bad Company squad themselves elevated the experience, turning what could have been another forgettable military shooter into something truly memorable, filled with personality and camaraderie. Add to that the revolutionary destructibility, the varied mission design, and the freedom to play your way, and you have a game that still feels unique even 15 years later. What stings is knowing that we've never been given a true continuation, because while other Battlefield titles have leaned harder into multiplayer chaos and spectacle, none have managed to recapture the blend of heart, humor and freedom that Bad Company brought to the table. A Bad Company 3 or even a faithful remaster of the original 2 would be more than just nostalgia, it would be a reminder of how much character and creativity can elevate a FPS game beyond just being another game in the pile. The fact that people still talk about and replay Bad Company 2 after all this time says more about its staying power than any sales chart or marketing campaign could. For me, Bad Company 2 represents Battlefield at its absolute best. It was a game that respected the player's time, encouraged experimentation, and gave us characters worth remembering. It managed to balance intensity with levity, destruction with strategy, and story with gameplay in a way that few shooters have ever been able to truly match. That's why I will always hold out hope for the Bad Company squad, because in an era where so many shooters feel disposable and kind of shit, Bad Company 2 stands as proof that some experiences are worth returning to again and again, and that Battlefield once delivered something truly unforgettable.